Okay. So I think we are live.
I think so too. I'm looking at the
We don't have
Dallas Soccer
a
Show
link
area.
yet.
Yeah.
All right, there we go. I'll go ahead and post the link.
Oh, and I see it on the page too. DSS Virtual Happy Hour.
So I think we are live. So you have
So
to
too,
mute
I'm
that.
looking at the
don't have
Dallas Soccer. I just did. Yes. Yes, we are.
All right, I'm going to spam the link in all the places.
Something happened. Boys, can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't see you, so what happened here?
It's unfortunate because I even showered for this, man.
You know, let's see, is it something that says host your own Zoom meeting?
Well, you can try dropping off and hopping back on.
Yeah, I'll do that. See you in a second.
Alrighty.
And then we'll officially kick off.
Yep.
That'll work.
Catch back. There it is. Yeah.
There are two people watching now. I'm assuming that's you and me, Jonathan.
I actually closed it out. So.
Oh, hey, so we got one other person.
All right.
All right. All right. We'll go and kick off things. And I think we've got a couple of people in a minute. So, Jonathan, would you mind watching the YouTube chat for questions and stuff, just in case?
I will see if I can't do that. Sounds good.
Sweet. Right. Hello and welcome to the Dallas Soccer Show Happy Hour Edition. I'm Dustin Nation, and today we're going to try something new in light of pretty much the whole world shutting down around us and MLS being on hold. We thought it'd be a good time to catch up with some local soccer personalities, just kick back, throw back our specialty craft beer of choice, and just take our mind off of things for a little bit with the happy hour. Joining me as usual is Jonathan Ross. How's it going, Jonathan?
It's going pretty good. I feel bad because I started with a Bloody Mary. The craft beer is in the fridge as backup though, but I wanted to mix it up today.
Well, now you made me a liar.
But we do have drinking rules, right? So if anybody says the word Corona, COVID, or virus, you have to take a shot, right? Isn't that how it works?
Done. And taking a break from his recent home culinary exploits on loan to us from his dog Timu, columnist, FC Dallas TV analyst, Steve Davis. Steve, you got enough of that food that you've been making to go around?
Man, me and the dog just split a little snack because dinner's later.
Well, we appreciate you pushing it off. So, well, what have you guys been up to with the Corona shutdown?
Can I ask real quick? Nobody told me whether I was supposed to wear pants or not, so I didn't. Is that okay?
I mean, listen, just don't back up.
Yeah, it's all based on camera angle. So as long as you're good.
Oh.
And we have
another has just joined us.
What's going on, Mr. Follow-up? Can you hear us?
We'll figure out how to take himself off mute in a minute.
Oh, here, I'll go ahead and do it for him. Nope, he doesn't have a mic hooked up.
He does. It's right there on the side of his fancy earphones.
Well, Zoom doesn't think he does.
God, follow. If you can hear us, blink twice, buddy.
Oh, there he is. I think we got him. All right.
Hi.
Howdy.
Hey, welcome.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
All right, nice. I thought that I was going to have to go sans headset. Does the headset sound okay?
Yeah, it sounds good.
Loud and clear.
Nice.
You've already missed the rules of the live pod though. So you have to have a beer in hand. They did say Bloody Mary's okay. And
what about a margarita from Glorious?
That'll work. Yes.
Oh, hello,
I've
Jewel.
already assessed that pants are optional. So
do you want to say hi, Jewel?
Whatever.
Yeah. Jewel, do you want to say hello?
Nah.
Hi, how are you, Jewel? Yeah, they saw Dad was doing something, so they wanted to get involved. How are you guys tonight?
Doing great.
Doing good.
Good.
That's good.
What's up, Dustin?
You've been
What's up, Steve? Good to see you.
Hey, buddy, you too. Good to see you too, John Arnold.
What's
hello,
up?
John.
How you gentlemen doing?
Fantastic, John.
Cool.
All is
right.
good, John.
If you are watching this live, you can join the conversation with us. Just DM me on Twitter. It's at Dallas Soccer Show, and I'll shoot you a link, and you can join the Zoom call with us for a little bit if you want. But until then, we're just gonna have a happy hour. Mark, have you've been like practicing your vocals in the background, keeping your chords all limber?
No, I can't say that I've been really doing much of that. Just doing what everybody's doing and trying to keep yourself as busy as possible. I got to say that last night I did a really good job. Jennifer and I both did yesterday here at the house. We didn't watch any news. And then last night she didn't. She went to sleep, and that was smart. I, for whatever reason, decided to go down the wormhole of looking online, which then led me to believe by 1 o'clock in the morning that we're either careening towards the Great Depression on steroids, or everybody's going to get sick to the level of the bubonic plague in England in the Middle Ages. So, it was kind of a dark place to go that deep into it and to see all the various opinions about it. So I certainly welcome talking some, whatever that is we're going to talk tonight, and getting our mind off everything else that's happening in the world.
Yeah, I've been suggesting everybody should just start Corona Free Friday, where just every Friday you get up and pretend like there's nothing else going on. No news. Stay off Twitter, right?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Try to enjoy life and see how it goes. Does make a difference.
You just got to click every article that's written by John Arnold and, your esteemed panel. As long as everyone does that, then, I'm down with everything. But hey, we need the clicks right now too, not the panic. I understand. I'm not trying to rile anybody up, but if it's an article about a historic, Mexican team in the Libertadores or something, yeah, go ahead and give that one a click even on your Fridays.
I think that's a good plan.
What have you been up to, John?
No, well, listen, I picked the world's worst time to quit my job. So if you guys don't follow me on Twitter or social media or whatever, I quit my job at Goal. I'm, still a writer, still a soccer guy, etc. But I put in a month notice, basically letting the company know, hey, I'm going to take this step. I'm going to be a full-time freelancer, see how it goes. And it happened to be that my last day was March 16th, which was the first Monday, 2 or 3 days after the NBA suspended and all the other major leagues followed suit. So, I knew it was going to be a challenge. I knew I was taking a risk. I didn't realize exactly the size of the risk I was taking. But that said, with the connections I have, it is a scary time. It is a worrying time. Look, individually, but on the whole, in the globe, when I asked on Twitter, I made sure to say, like, there's more important things going on, right? I'm going to be fine. It's going to be good. But yeah, so I've been emailing editors and doing some stuff with some people I already have existing relationships with and that kind of thing. So, doing the same, like Mark said, doing the same thing everybody else has been doing, just trying to catch up on some reading, some Netflix shows, and watching some historic matches. I haven't gotten to as many of those as I'm hoping, but I think we're going to have time, unfortunately. So I've got Netherlands, Czech Republic, Euro 2004 queued up for tonight, maybe. So we'll see. We'll get wild, and then we'll take it from there. But yeah, that's what I've been up to. It's been difficult, honestly, but at the same time, like I said, I'm going to be fine. I feel good, and I'm excited about this step, even though it would be a lot easier to just be pounding out an article a day for Goal, and other than that, putting my feet up on the couch. But that's not how it went, and that's fine. Here I am.
You want to plug your link real quick? You got a newsletter?
Yeah, so I started a newsletter about CONCACAF. Right now it's free for everyone. Going to come out like 2 or 3 times a week. Random stuff. Today I focused on just kind of community and how maybe we're lacking that a little bit in the CONCACAF world as compared to other regions in the soccer ecosphere of the world, whatever. And also looked into the Trinidad and Tobago scandal that's happening right now. Soccer is not going on in CONCACAF, but it seems that scandal never rests in this region. So FIFA came in last week and they said, nope, this FA, you're bored, you're done. We're putting in a council called a normalization committee, and they're going to run things for up to 2 years. So dove into that a little bit. If that sounds something like something up your alley, I'm not even sure what the link is, but follow me on Twitter, Arnold John. I've got the link there. It's called Getting CONCACAF. That's the name of the newsletter. You could sign up. It'd be great if you guys can put your email in there. You'll get it in your inbox automatically. That just makes it easier. Obviously, it's so easy to miss things. Even now, there's just, information bombardment. I want to bombard you right in your inbox. So if you put your email in there, that's a help. So that's where I'm doing some of my most fun writing right now, and it's kind of staying connected to the soccer scene through that.
Yeah, I think as a broadcaster, just in general, or anybody covering sports, whether it be sports writer or sports broadcaster, it's kind of an interesting time, right? A lot of people are now work from home. I am myself, right? But for most of us, the day job hasn't changed that much, right? But for people in your industry, obviously, whether you're writing or trying to cover things, it's very different than it was, just 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also just kind of about figuring out, what do people want right now? What do people need right now? And the sports, people say it's the most important unimportant thing. And I think that's a great description, right? So, we're missing it. We're wishing that sports were happening, but at the same time, we understand that this isn't the most crucial thing right now. I know some newsrooms around the country are switching sports reporters over to the news side to try and help with the mountainous task that they have now, trying to tell this story, keep people informed with reliable information. I think the morning news is doing some of that, making changes to the print product as well. Listen, your sports page isn't going to be as robust, but hopefully we all are smart about this. Hopefully our leaders in place make the right decisions, and we get through this sooner rather than later. So we are back to, your sports page, and love, here and follow on the broadcast and enjoying Luca, all that stuff that we do care about, even though it's not important. But right now it's just about figuring out sort of, what do people need to know, and what do people want to kind of be distracted with in those moments where we are so desperately seeking distractions, maybe like never before.
If I may, I would like to follow up to something that John said. And I think that the region that John covers in CONCACAF, there's kind of, like, listening to what John had to say, there's kind of an interesting tie-in and kind of an interesting twist in terms of what soccer is in some areas of CONCACAF and what we're all going through right now. I've had the pleasure of doing a couple of Gold Cups, and I've done women's CONCACAF Olympic qualifiers that included doing matches involving the Reggae Girls of Jamaica and Martinique and the Caribbean islands. I thought one of the great stories that Warren Barton and I got to cover last year in the Gold Cup was Bermuda. And so if there's any, to relate to what John covers in CONCACAF soccer, if there's any region in the world that has national football teams that understand what it's like to have great periods of uncertainty, where is my funding coming from? How can I schedule matches? And this is one of the things that makes CONCACAF Nations League so great, because it is going to help these teams kind of have a little bit more stability. But if any, to relate it to the situation that we're all experiencing in the world right now, if any group of individuals understand what it's like to go dark for a period of time, to have uncertainty, to not know what's around the bend for the future of their program, a lot of Caribbean island nations, when it comes to their football programs, especially women's football programs, probably experience that, John, a lot in the Caribbean. And so they might have kind of a unique perspective on what seems like something that is so incredibly foreign, and so something that we're struggling so much to cope with is sort of, in some weird way, it's almost kind of business as usual for them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you look at the Trinidad and Tobago situation I wrote about today. Well, this is a team that their women got sent to US, to World Cup qualifying. They didn't have a place to train. They didn't have a place to stay. They didn't have
right here in Frisco,
right here in Frisco, and down the road in Houston as well during that tournament. So, yeah, absolutely. They've had to cope with, what does it look like when sports aren't funded? What does it look like when the advertisers simply are not there? What is it? And obviously, not for as serious a reach, because of mismanagement and because people are routing funds the wrong way, et cetera, right? And that's why, I'm not so sure who. I kind of wrote in the newsletter, like, I don't know who the good guys are in this situation, in this whole Trinidad and Tobago thing. I don't know if there are good guys, right? It seems entirely possible that it's not, but they certainly are used to dealing with this sort of scenario where we're coping with a lot of the questions now, where you look at, women's sport in specific in the US even is saying, we've had funding in the past, kind of, now we're really starting to get some momentum. You know, look at the women winning the World Cup once again. You see them in advertising campaigns. You see people step up. But it is sort of, you know, I read a few articles that kind of said, hey, this would probably be the first thing on the chopping block for a lot of advertisers, and what's the future of women's sport. And I think there are some good resources there in that region, in the CONCACAF region, where we can say, this is what it looks like, and this is why we can't let that happen, because we need these things to continue to be strong, not just for women in sport, but for our society, right? So it's an interesting parallel.
And the big news today was, you know, officially having the Olympics be postponed, which obviously impacts people across, you know, all kinds of different sports. I don't know if you guys had any thoughts around how that may impact the kind of the Olympic team for the U.S., the Olympic soccer team.
Well, around here, I mean, you just feel bad. You feel bad for Jason Christ. A lot of us know him, and everybody around here remembers him. Feel terrible for all of the FC Dallas connections. And I don't know, guys, did they say, I saw something about possibly tweaking the age a little bit, or is
that would be interesting.
You know about that?
I hadn't seen that, but that would be a good way to make sure somebody doesn't miss out on the Olympics because they happen to age out in the 1 year or whatever it gets delayed.
Now, all the FC Dallas guys would be okay. Reggie's still only 21, is that correct?
Yeah, Reggie's 21, That's right. And he's the oldest. Yep.
Yeah. What did you guys think about the, not to change the subject, but that was interesting the other day when Reggie just sort of let it slip, or did he, about the plan was to transfer this summer.
I don't know if that's a surprise for anybody that was what he wanted to do. It was interesting that he came out and actually said it, because it's not something Reggie normally does, right? Reggie's very much you know, wants to say, hey, I'm happy here in Dallas. I'm playing for the club. If things happen, things happen. For him to actually come out and say, hey, this is, you know, this could impact my ability to move in the summer. That makes me feel like it was, you know, some pretty serious discussions if he was going to actually come out and say something.
I don't think Reggie said much about it at all. I'm sorry. Go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, I thought that the most interesting thing, not that came out last week or anything, but that came out was when you look at how FC Dallas structured that deal. I thought it was a smart business from Andres Anota to kind of add incentive for the club, but also for the player to sell, right? Because I think that's a fear of a lot of these guys. Fear might be too strong of a word, but that's something where it has to go through your mind. If you know still the very best way to get to the elite level is to move from MLS to Europe, but you're sort of this part of this foundation, this group of players that Dan Hunt says, you know, I want to keep this group around. They're the face of the franchise. We could win trophies with this group. I just thought it was a very sort of interesting way to build the deal, to make it happen in a really sort of smart way. I think of doing business, a good compromise, sort of meet you in the middle, right? You know, if we don't sell you by this date, we're going to be paying you a whole lot of money. And I think that it's a good signal to players. You know, there's going to be a lot of these in the future. I'm not just talking about, you know, Paxton or Jesus. I'm talking about, you know, you can go on down the line into the academy. The whole idea of FC Dallas is that they're going to be signing these kids, honestly. But, you know, I think it does help prevent Weston McKennie situations and that kind of thing. So I thought that was the most interesting thing that came out, Steve. But I think you're going to say something about kind of Reggie's approach to the situation and what he said recently.
Nope. That was it. I was just I just was making the comment that he hadn't actually said a whole lot about it. Mark, Mark, you and Dusty, you haven't said much here. What do you guys think is where's Reggie's preferred destination? Where would he do well? What do you guys think about that?
Dustin, I'll let you take it first.
I don't know. I know that there were some. Was it either the Netherlands or Belgium? There were some rumors about him going there. It's one of the two. So like a smaller league, and then there was the England rumor of was it Sunderland or something like that?
Oh,
that. Am I getting my rumors straight here? I'm not. It's been a while since I've looked them up. You know, do I have any idea where he's gonna? I don't know.
No, where do you think? What's his
level? I want him
to
go?
Like? Where would he succeed? Where would you want to see him go?
I'd say either Championship or in England, or probably maybe France, top flight.
When I think about that, I think about, where have Americans gone in the past and had some success? And, you look at the Netherlands, and playing in the Eredivisie and the Netherlands might be certainly an option. I can't think of too many. I guess Alejandro Bedoya played at Nantes in France, and that would be one example I could think of an American going to Ligue 1 and having a little bit of success. But I can't think of too many Americans going anywhere in France and being terribly successful. The Eredivisie in Holland's been a good place. I think the English Championship has been a good place for some Americans. The question there is always is that league is one of the most difficult in the world from the fact that you just have such a heavy workload. They play there's 24 teams in the league. You play 23 teams twice. That's a 46 fixture schedule plus League Cup and FA Cup and the other opportunities that come about. That is a grind to play in that particular league. And so that's a lot to ask in terms of club level football. And then obviously the importance of Reggie to the national team along with that. So maybe something where the schedule was a little bit more manageable for him, for anybody for that matter. And I think in terms of what that might mean for how he would play with the national team might be better. And that would be the biggest concern I would have about him playing in the English Championship is that's just, I know some Americans have done well there. Eric Lehigh is somebody that jumps to mind that played at Nottingham Forest for a long time. I know he hasn't necessarily had a whole lot of opportunities at the national team level, a handful, but not many. But to me, that's while it is a good league and it is at a pretty good level, that would be one of the drawbacks I would say about Reggie going to the English Championship. Don't you?
So would you say then Bundesliga, where
Bundesliga would be?
is...
I love that league. I think that's a fantastic league.
It also. Sorry, Mark. It also, his position makes it difficult in some ways because if you're a forward, you can transfer anywhere and you're going to, if you score goals, you play. If you're a midfielder, you can probably play in a couple different roles in the center. You need to have the right fit as well. And look, people aren't going to be spending as much money for a right back as they're going to be spending on a forward or midfielder, which is another reason I thought it was wise to build those incentives into the deal because it could be very easy for FC Dallas to say, well, actually, we're not interested in selling for only $1 or $2 million or whatever the fee is. He could really blow up. He could increase his value. I don't know what he said at a transfer market right now. I'm just throwing those numbers out of my head. But the Liga as well as a place. Davis have success there after moving as a winger, becoming a wing fullback, whatever. All over the place. Reggie's not at that level. He's not at that talent. But he is. You could see him being. As well as his position at a frozen. Oh no, I did.
Yeah, I think we're losing John.
Uh-oh. What's up with the Wi-Fi?
Too many people at the house streaming Netflix. It is a good point though. I think that was one of the concerns when the that may have prolonged, how long they worked with Reggie on that deal was, as a right back, you're not going to get, or there's very few leagues that are going to pay top dollar for a right back, right? And so unless he wanted to limit his options, doing that extension with FC Dallas would be quite risky. So, I mean, I agree with John that it was a really good balance and a good way, and perhaps it is the path for those future players to show that hey, there is a way through FC Dallas that you can make it up to whatever European league, and that we're not going to hold you back.
I'm just a little bit surprised, you guys. Talking about Belgium, the Jupiler League would be a sideways step for him. Honestly, at this point, Eredivisie is fine, except that unless you're playing for Ajax or PSV.
Wow! You brought prize.
Or some of one of the bigger teams. I think the Eredivisie is not something that maybe Reggie's only still sort of weakness in his game. A little bit of he could probably polish up that one-on-one defending a little bit more. He's not going to do that in the Dutch league where they're going to want him bombing up the right side. So the championship I think is fine. Tim Ream plays in the championship and he's been national team back and forth for quite a while. But the problem is right now, I think Reggie Cannon is a better outside back than Tim Ream. So I'm not even sure that championship might even be a little bit low for him. I really think that mid-level Bundesliga club, something like that, mid-table Spanish club would be fine. But if you look at, I know a lot of it is about situation and who a club has and somebody in front of them, they already have a good right back or a good central midfielder or whatever. But Weston McKennie, going right over there and starting at Schalke, starting at a good Bundesliga team, I think you look at that and you say, yeah, I really think Reggie Cannon could go in and start for a mid-level Bundesliga team, assuming they don't have some really great incumbent right back already.
I think that would be the optimal scenario, to be perfectly honest with you, is could he land at a decent Bundesliga team or something like that? If he could do that, then I think all things considered, that would be probably the optimal scenario for Reggie.
All right, so we got some comments rolling in from the YouTube channel here.
Hi, YouTube.
So get your mind correct. First of all, he says, go Mark, you mean green legend, baby. Then he says he disagrees. Josie was great at AZ Alkmaar and made him well known not only in the Netherlands but through Europe. So, like, I guess a stair step, like get your foot in the door type scenario. But striker versus RB right back may not be the same demand.
Well, striker is a great spot for somebody in the Eredivisie because they don't play much defense. It's all about attack there. So, I'm not sure. Now, if Reggie Cannon was a lockdown right back who needed to polish his going forward skills, but I think Reggie Cannon is good in possession, passing out of the back. He understands how to do that, possession through the midfield. He's a pretty good crosser of the ball. He's gotten better and better at that. So, it's a different situation for right back.
Steve, do you think there's anything to the concept of that we look at leagues in Europe and say, okay, X number of American players have gone there and had success, and some American players on and tried it there and haven't had success? Do you think there's something to that in terms of a big picture view, or do you think that's more something to be judged on an individual case-by-case basis?
Yeah, it's absolutely individual case-by-case, because we talked about Josie Altidore, who did great in the Eredivisie. And remember when he came back to Major League Soccer, everybody thought everybody laughed about it because, all of the English soccer snobs said, well, the guy couldn't even score at Sunderland. He couldn't even score in England. And of course, the Sunderland for a striker, it's a terrible spot because he was up there by himself and all he played was defense at the time, and maybe still do. I don't watch much Sunderland, although I have been to the Stadium Light. It's not a bad place. So it's absolutely individual. Who's in front of him at the position? Who is the coach? At what point of development is he? Is he okay to, is he Cameron Carter-Vickers who can go over there and then kind of stair step his way up, or is he Tyler Adams who needs to go over there and he is not going to progress unless he's playing immediately, assuming he's not hurt or something like that. So it's all about coach, fit, style. What kind of style is best for you? What kind of style they play, and then just and after that, you maybe can get into the cultural things and how easy is it for you to assimilate it, because you don't want to land a Donovan issue where you're up there by yourself in a cold northern Germany land having a miserable time, so you have to come back. So it's all individual, in my opinion.
I think I'm 100% agreeing with Steve, but it is the system. It's what you play. I'm coming to think of a very random stint in MLS player, Angelino, who we saw in the Champions League with RB Leipzig not long ago. I think he's still Man City's property, or that's not a good way to talk about a player, but his rights are still owned by Man City. He's a Champions League fullback, and he went through PSV after going through New York City FC. That the path is strange, and it doesn't have to be linear, right? A lot of times I think we get stuck in this mindset of like, the ideal scenario is player, develops, graduates from the FC Dallas Academy at age 18, puts his, signs on the dotted line, or age 17 or whatever, plays 3 or 4 great years, and then he jumps immediately to Ajax, or he's so good that he goes straight to Real Madrid or whatever, right? But there are often paths that don't look like that, that still end in success, that still end in Champions League, that still end in players becoming regular contributors for the national team. All of those things, I think, are stated goals of FC Dallas and of the players that we're talking about. So I absolutely think it depends on fit, right? Angelino, it is random for me to bring him up, but he's a guy who in that PSV system that Philip Koku and later Mark van Bommel ran, it was just do whatever you want, go forward, pair with players, and it worked. I think I've frozen again.
Nope.
Nope, we still got you. Oh, wait.
Oh. We don't.
Only the
Yeah, it
video. We
was.
could still hear.
Oh,
Yeah.
I miss
Audio
John.
good, video frozen.
It's okay. It's a good pause face.
That's right. So we talked a lot about Reggie and his impact. Is there anybody else that you guys can think of where this break in play has a big impact? You know, for example, some of the other players that were going into the Olympics or might be playing for men's national team.
It probably has a big impact on Paxton Pomykal, just in terms of it's more time to get fit, more time to get healthy. I don't think there's anything.
So you're saying a positive impact?
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly open to. I mean, I'm open to somebody debating me on that. But I feel like that there's probably benefit in the fact that he was still being eased into it. So I think allowing his body more time to heal and get closer to truly full on 100%, and then being able to get into a resumption of training, and then we'll see where it goes in terms of what sort of workload that he can handle. But I think there's probably, again, I'm open to anybody disagreeing with me about that, but I think there actually might be at least a little bit of a ray of a positive aspect of that for him.
Yeah, and Paxton did say that he was. So I actually talked to Paxton Wednesday before everything, before that, what we're supposed to be the NYFC game, and he was saying that this for the first time in a long time he was actually feeling 100%, no soreness, other than just regular soreness after the prior match. I think he was really looking forward to, I think, getting some more opportunities, perhaps even to start in New York. So, but it's agreed. It's that balance between fitness, right? And he's got plenty of time to work out now, and then game fitness, right? Which is kind of tough to replicate.
It's such a tricky injury that, growing adductor hip flexor, and that's what he was dealing with. That, we've seen these guys come back, and it still bothers him a little bit. So it doesn't hurt my feelings at all that he's got just a little bit more time. He's not really losing anything because, nobody's losing anything. Everybody's going to come back. Everybody's, off, so to speak. But don't forget, I mean, Jesus Ferreira was carrying a little bit of an injury. And, of course, Brian Acosta will be able to get back. So you could reasonably say that when FC Dallas comes back, they're going to be a healthier team. And Lucci's got more lineup choices and choices for the 18 than when they broke.
I think, Dustin, I have another thought on a player that this might have an interesting impact on, but it sounded like you had something you wanted to say as well, Dustin.
No, I think that the player this has a big impact on is Cobra, because it puts us closer to the end of the Liga MX's contract period for Hara. So there's added pressure for him to perform and be able to keep his position. And if there are no Euros, or they're delayed, then he's not gone. So he's here. He's competing for a position against a new striker that could be coming in, in July, which could be the first half of the season still.
Well, so, and okay, so I want to get John's perspective on this, because it's interesting you brought up Cobra, because the player that I wanted to bring up in terms of impact here is Franco Jara, because we don't know how long Liga MX is now going to be delayed, how much of a season that they're going to try to play. Are they going to try to play a full 17-match clausura, which one would surmise that's probably going to be difficult for them to do. So how much of a Liga are they going to play? Off the top of my head, I don't know where Pachuca was in their table. But rather than getting a Franco Jara in June after a full Apertura and Clausura and possibly playing in the Liga as well, they might get a fresher Franco Jara who might not need time to kind of rest his body a little bit before jumping into the rigors of an FC Dallas Major League Soccer season in the middle of a very hot summer. John probably might have some interesting perspective on what this means for Franco Jara in terms of how this could impact his transition at FC Dallas.
Well, it also depends on what the contract says, right? Because if the contract says after the Liga MX season, then you're going to have to wait for him, right? Or maybe not. It kind of depends on if they try and force it through. But if the contract says in May, May 30th or whatever, I'm not a lawyer and I haven't, certainly that's not my expertise, but it's an interesting thought, right? There are so many of these questions that are going to come up when, Lord willing, we get the ball rolling again. It's going to be really fascinating. I think that, ultimately Liga MX probably is going, we all sat and watched the games. Was it just last weekend? 2 weekends ago? It feels like 2 years ago, but they were one of the last leagues to postpone. Mexico's response has not been proactive, let's say. when you look at like what AMLO has done, the president, when you look at even what the league has done, although the Liga MX president, Enrique Bonilla, has coronavirus. So it's difficult to say, but it definitely seems like they want to get going as quickly as possible. There was a owners teleconference this week. I feel like they will probably try and play sooner than MLS teams want to, but it's all a guess at this point, right? But it is an interesting dynamic to wonder how is that going to affect when Franco Jara rocks up here in Frisco. And I think Dustin's point of it's affecting Cobra is a really interesting one, because I sort of assumed, and this is, I'm not with the day-to-day anymore, I'm with FC Dallas, but I sort of assumed he was going to go try and have an amazing first half of the year, have a fantastic, Euros, represent his country. What an experience. And then if I'm FC Dallas and I've got Franco Jara showing up and I've got, Pepe and Jesus Ferreira in my reserve, if somebody, a Polish team that remembers Cobra from his time there, or a Czech team wants to bring him home, I'm saying, cool, have him, right? I'll take the cash and run. But now that doesn't look like it's an option because the Euros aren't for another year. So I think he's a player that this has an enormous effect on when we're talking about the sporting aspect, because I sort of figured, and I don't know if that was his plan or FC Dallas's plan. Maybe they were going to roll through. I don't know. But that was a scenario that I was envisioning as a certain possibility that now is obviously not going to happen.
Do any of you agree with the thought that I've had, and I brought this up on the last telecast that we did, Steve, that the reason FC Dallas has implemented a 3-5-2 some in preseason training and preseason games, and then they went to it in the Montreal game, I believe, if memory serves correct, because it does seem like forever ago, that the idea was that they were not just fiddling around with it for the heck of fiddling around with it, that they were looking at that as something to cope with two things. One, if Reggie Cannon was indeed going to move on and they were going to maybe play with the idea of three in the back. And more accurately, though, and more bigger picture, the idea of if Cobra continues to score goals at the rate that he scored goals late last year and 2 in the first 2 regular season games, we can't set the guy down, but we didn't bring Franco Jara here to sit here and be a sub off the bench. Could this team look at playing with 2 strikers? And those 2 strikers, obviously, are Cobra and Franco Jara, and playing a system like that.
So, yeah, I think you're right, except that maybe that wasn't going to be a full tactical shift to that. Lucci told us he wanted to be able to make the tactical adjustment into a 3-5-2. And I think you're absolutely right that if Reggie goes and you have 2 strikers and plus Jesus is better at second striker, it does give them the tactical flexibility to go that way if he wants to. And I don't think Lucci will get too upset with me for saying this, but pretty sure they were going to go to, they would have played 3-5-2 up in New York when they went up there. So, yes. So to your point, I don't think it was going to be, hey, we have to be a 3-5-2 team when Franco Jara gets here. It's more that we're going to do more 3-5-2, and this is one of the reasons why we're going to do a little bit more of it. That's my opinion, though.
Well, I think the point that if it's going to be a flexible formation, though, Steve, it is a little bit more difficult for Cobra, I think, to be able to change formations without switching out players, right? Where if you like someone like Jesus, right? Jesus could easily play in that 8-10 role and then shift up to a secondary striker, and you're really not going to miss a beat. You can't play the Cobra in midfield, right? So,
but you can play him as the highest striker.
You could, yes, yeah. So
that's the role he would always be. If he was on the field, he's going to be the higher striker.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting that you talk about the tactical flexibility. I think that he feels a lot more, from what I can tell, it feels like he feels a lot more able to actually do that and do it well this season than he did last season, with all the different pieces he's added with Santos and Fafa Pico. That he feels like, yeah, I can do implement whatever I need to at the time in order to get done, where maybe he didn't feel like he had that flexibility or even that the pieces to do those things last season.
No question. Last year, if you remember, Mark, I think it was you and I on this one. Philadelphia, they get the lead with the Reto Ziegler free kick. They end up blowing that lead at the end, and later he told you and I that I was thinking about going to 3 in the back, and I was thinking about doing this, and I didn't do it. I didn't pull the trigger, and he said I learned a lesson. I asked him just a couple of weeks ago, we talked about it, how he went so early this time against Philadelphia to that alignment. And I said, you told me last year that, I said, I was wondering, we had this conversation, and last year you said you didn't go to it early enough. I was wondering if you were thinking about that as you made that tactical switch. He said, Steve, I was thinking about it all year, how I messed that one up. And so that was really interesting. So he really dug in on that we have to be more tactically flexible. And I want the ability to do that game by game or in a moment's notice during a game.
I sure think one thing I've noticed, Steve, and our times of talking to Lucci and then just observing how he has matured as a head coach, manager, whatever you want to call it, from the beginning of last year to 2 games into this season. And then whenever we get going again, he's incredibly self-aware and incredibly self-reflective. He's not dogmatic, for lack of a better term, in terms of this is my system and this is the way we always must play soccer. He certainly seems to, he has ideals and he has ways to play that he's committed to, but he also understands that there needs to be some flexibility, and there is, a learning curve, and there is, more than one way to secure 3 points. As he told us one time last year, we want players to play A to B to C, but sometimes if it makes sense to go A to C, then we're okay with them doing that, and it certainly seems like that he's got, an incredible willingness to be self-reflective in terms of those things, like the example you just brought up.
Yeah, for sure. And he always makes the point that it's, the system is basically the same. It's basically what he's talking about are different flavors of the same tactical ice cream, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah. I mean, you've got your ice cream, and sometimes you put gummy bears in it, and sometimes it's chocolate syrup, and sometimes it's crushed Butterfinger. So, if you go to Cold Stone, I mean, there's a reason they give you all kinds of different little things that you can put in your ice cream.
That's right.
So I really want to know what John's making with all these concoctions he's putting in.
My guess is something with mezcal, but honestly, you have to run that by Mark Followell, otherwise it's not official.
I'll go grab my bottle of mezcal. I'll be right back. Hold on with this. Yes.
Now, what are you making?
That is. You're muted, my guy.
Still muted.
Still muted.
Yeah,
killing us,
All
man.
right.
There you
It's
go.
dark and stormy time. We got a little rum, ginger beer, lime. I just use lime juice instead of a lime because I don't think I have a fresh one. And you're on a beach somewhere. Cheers.
You need to use one of those virtual backgrounds of the beach.
As you can tell from my freezing stream, I'm not fluent enough in this Zoom to do. Oh, wow.
Look at that.
Yeah,
Justin's ready to go.
I tried the Craven Cottage, my background, and the other boys saw this early. It didn't work out so well. I look like a space monster.
So my friend Brian Damaris got this for me. This is called Mezonte, and it's actually from Michoacan. And so I've been enjoying this one quite a bit recently. This is a good mezcal.
Now mezcal is like tequila style moonshine, right?
It's an agave based, but I wouldn't call it moonshine. No, it's agave based.
Okay.
No.
All right. We'll see. I'm incredibly uncultured.
And here's my little
tequila.
Talavera sipping cup.
Salute.
It's tequila's classier brother.
Yes, classier, smokier, huskier brother, pretty much. It's very smooth. Raicilla would be the thing that would be the agave style agave plant. Yeah, that would be moonshine. And Raicilla is, you can find it in the States. It's a very popular drink if you go to Jalisco or the Nayarit area, right there north of Puerto Vallarta. You fly into Puerto Vallarta and you drive right across the border from Jalisco to Nayarit. And if you go to bars there in Bucerias or Sayulita, tequila obviously is the most popular thing. And I would say that probably Raicilla is right up there in terms. Mezcal is hard to find there. Mezcal is a Oaxaca, Michoacan, Durango, places like that. Whereas Jalisco is a tequila, and then it's as much Raicilla as it is mezcal in terms of restaurant and bar drink menus.
I told you if you have a mezcal drink on this conversation, you have to run it by the mezcal master. Them's the rules, boys.
So, so for the people watching on the live stream, Steve was asking us this question earlier, and let's see if anybody else can figure out what shirt is he wearing? What is on his shirt? So post that in the chat, and we'll see who gets a prize.
I said it a while ago, so it's not really official.
Did you? Must have been reading the chat instead of
Dustin
listening.
he doesn't listen. No.
Oh.
I said it almost in passing. Actually, you had to kind of catch it. So
yeah.
Okay. Well,
I mean, he did point to the logo on the shirt and say,
yes.
yeah, he did. He did. I would say it was a little bit more than in
He said, Dustin, look.
So let's pivot a little bit away from FC Dallas. You guys have been in the industry a long time. Steve, how many years?
Yeah.
Like at least 10?
Yeah.
Right?
All of them?
We won't go more than that.
All of them, yeah. I like that answer. I was a cover reporter when I kind of started doing when they assigned me the World Cup in '94. And I was because nobody at the paper cared about soccer, and I'd only recently joined the paper, and they were like, "Yeah, sure, you can cover soccer and cover the World Cup and whatever." And they didn't realize it was going to be a big deal. That was like 90. I guess that was 92. So that'll give. So there's your answer.
That was for your high school paper, you said?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well played, sir. So
my question, I guess, is like, what's the craziest thing you guys have experienced in your time covering the game?
Obviously 9/11, when Major League Soccer shut down, they suspended the last part of the season. And then because of the economic impact of it, there was contrition. And, it was a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, maybe 4 on the ESPN Soccer Today show that recently, rest in peace, we interviewed Dan Hunt. And that's where Dan Hunt first told the story that, the league actually folded. A lot of people don't know that. And he talked about the bankruptcy lawyers being in the room and what have you. And then the next day it was his father that rallied Philip Anschutz and said, "No, let's keep it going. Let's find a way to keep this thing going." So soccer wise, that's for American soccer, that's got to be it, because I know a lot of people get frustrated with Major League Soccer because they want it to be bigger and bolder and better and go spend and just release this, no salary cap and all that. And and I don't want to be old guy that says, "Hey, wait a minute here, boys, Sonny, you don't remember back in the day when we had." I don't want to be that guy, but this is why, because they remember that building slow, and you just kind of keep going forward. Being the turtle and instead of the rabbit sometimes is just the way to go.
Yeah, and without MLS, just on that point, without MLS having the big TV contracts that other leagues have really to support it, right? It's a lot more difficult, especially for maybe not a small market team, but teams like a Dallas or a Houston or a Columbus or whatever, right? That don't have a ton of other avenues for revenue.
Sure.
So.
And by the way, obviously, this is the weirdest time for all of us in anything.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to say
yeah,
that.
I was wondering if you were going to say
other than this,
in 10 years. Yeah.
Yes, right.
It's a weird time that I was covering Liga MX week to week very closely. Is that the refs went on strike, and that's something that sort of reminded me of this period, because it's you don't have games, you don't know what's going to happen, you have to figure out what to do. I interviewed a couple of fans who had bought tickets and traveled from the U.S. to different parts of Mexico to go to the games, and they just weren't happening because of a ref strike, which is obviously sort of a much easier to cope with, and sort of you laugh about it and it sends a huge message. Obviously, it's the owners and they can fix it, right? We can't fix this. We can't snap our fingers and make something go away. it's going to take time. It's going to take leadership. But that's something where I've thought about those weeks. I think it was week 10 of the 2016 Clausura in Mexico. Maybe I'm off. But there was a week where it was, the refs just said, no, we're not going to do it. They didn't show up, and there was no football. So, that's a time that I've been reminded of in my career reporting on this, but obviously nothing to the magnitude of what's happening globally. And it was weird because like a Puebla assistant coach who was quite old had a heart attack on the field and died before the first game that was about to be suspended. So there were all these other like weird elements. So it was quite difficult to keep up with as a reporter from the top left corner of Mexico. I think I was in Tijuana at the time, and I think I was home that weekend in Texas for a while. You're trying to call people in Puebla, you're trying to call people everywhere. So it was crazy, but that's the most similar situation to this that I've dealt with before. But obviously this is a whole different animal.
John, I have a kind of a maybe a bit of an uneducated follow-up question to ask about that. Would there have been any possibility? I don't recall the referee work stoppage in Liga MX in 2016, but would there have been any possibility or any consideration, or perhaps labor laws in Mexico wouldn't permit anything like this? But remember, replacement referees in the NFL, whenever the referees went on strike, and remember, the most famous play of that, the Fail Mary, involving Green Bay and Seattle on Monday Night Football. Could anything like that have happened?
Well, I think the thing in MLS, by the way, too. Go ahead, John.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. No, I think the thing was that the referees, were quite organized and quite smart about it, because as I mentioned, that first game was supposed to be Puebla. I think they might have been playing Veracruz, because Veracruz is always involved in any Mexican show, if you will. May they rest in peace. But no, but I think that they said until the very last minute, we might do it, we might not. And then as soon as they said nope, there was what are you going to do? Get a referee, call a referee from a local league at that point. So they waited until the very last moment to strike, and it threw things into, but it only lasted a week, right? Because they were able to come to an accord. And I think had it gone another week, it would have been a replacement ref situation where they find guys from the local leagues or what have you. But yeah, it was kind of well coordinated from the very last, to the very last second. The rivalry referee is fascinating. I've spent way too much time with FIFA referees the past year, doing random stories and stuff, and it's interesting. It's a part of the game that we don't think about very often, and maybe we'll have more time to reflect on that during this stoppage. But
did you cover the Veracruz Tigres game whenever the Veracruz players didn't play basically for the first 6 months?
No, I was at a concert at Deep Ellum Art Company that night, and it kind of ruined my night because I had to get back after, last notice struck, and I couldn't be cheering for an encore. I had to dart back to my place and do a column and do a news story. But yeah, I wasn't in at that time.
Hey, am I allowed to ask you a question?
Yeah.
I would like to know from these two on my left and right, Dustin and actually from all of you guys. So what would you prefer to see then with Major League Soccer? Empty stadiums for a while, if that expedited the return, that is, or you don't want to see that, you want to wait till they can go full on? I'll take my answer off the air. Thank you.
I'm happy.
First time caller, long time listener.
Yeah.
No, look, I'm happy to jump in and be the first one to answer that question. And I would say that I think that the country and the world is craving something so resembling normal, that at least to be able to sit and watch a game, even if the atmosphere was so peculiar because of not playing in front of fans, I think it would represent a step in the right direction. I think that my vote would be, assuming that you can be as smart and safe as humanly possible with playing games and make it a streamlined skeleton crew that's at the arena outside of the players that have to be there. At least if you can play and compete. And I know, look, the fans in the stands in soccer and basketball, they're such an important part of the event. And that, of course, would never, ever, ever be a long-term solution. But at least if it could ease us back into some sense of normalcy, I would certainly be okay with it. And I would also be okay, is there a way to maybe make it happen in terms of if you're an NBA team playing at a smaller venue, even your own team's practice court, which would look super weird, but it wouldn't be the idea of staging a game in a cavernous 20,000 seat empty arena. if you're an MLS team and you had to play the game maybe at a smaller venue where again, it didn't look so jarring to see so many of those empty seats, I would also be open to that. I think now is the time when probably anything and everything would have to be on the table. So I would be a proponent of getting back to play as soon as possible, even if it meant, you wouldn't have the gate revenue, but at least you would have, and whatever league that is that starts back up, at least you would have TV revenue.
I agree. That's where I fall as well. And I think another consideration is not only, this isn't as sort of important as you're saying, Mark, and I agree that, it would send a symbol that we're back. It would send a symbol that things are progressing in the right direction. It also just kind of gets us back on the calendar, because the later this goes, the more difficulties we'll have with scheduling big events, summer tournaments, whatever they will be, right? And each league has their own challenges. The NBA has to ask themselves, now they don't have the Olympics to worry about, but they say, well, if we end the season in August, we can't start back up again in late September or what have you. So I think there are considerations there as well that are less sort of poetic and beautiful, but are still important, right? That we want those games to be taking place. So I think this, as soon as possible, is better, whether there are fans, obviously better with fans, but I think the reality is that right now it's going to have to be without. The other thing is, the reality is that everyone who is involved is going to have to be tested, because there are so many of these situations where it's asymptomatic spread. And if you have one player or one referee or one anything, then it all goes back down again, right? Because that's just how this virus attacks us. And so we'd have to be very careful with it. But if we can ensure those conditions are in place, then I say, let's try and get back as soon as we can and kind of keep things running as much as we can to give us the hope that in 2021, we'll be back to sports as usual.
No, I completely agree. I would rather see the empty stadium than nothing at all. And even if it's at, FC Dallas plays down over at SMU or some place smaller where it's not so jarring to watch, that's fine. I mean, let's be honest, we're not too unfamiliar with empty seats in the stadium. So, I mean, I don't want to be that guy, but I'll be that guy. But and the other cool thing, like, let's get some parabolic mics out there and let's be able to hear what the players are saying. I want to see what they're saying when they cover their mouth like this and they're talking to the guy. Like, let's hear that stuff. I mean, that's a unique opportunity to be able to hear that kind of stuff and maybe pipe in some vuvuzelas or something. I don't know.
Look, I mean, I think clearly things were trending that way in professional sports. We know that there was going to be, I think, a Columbus Crew game was going to be played without fans. I believe there was maybe one other Major League Soccer game that was kind of on the docket to be played without fans before the season got suspended the day after the NBA suspended the season, March 11th. We all went to the game that we did, the Mavericks Denver Nuggets game on March the 11th, fully expecting that the next game we did, March the 14th at home against the Phoenix Suns, would be a game without fans. And then Rudy Gobert tested positive. And that was, if it hadn't been him, it would have been somebody else, presumably. But until patient zero occurred, whomever it was in professional sports, I think all of professional, and for that matter, the NCAA tournament, all of pro sports and college sports was headed towards, we're going to play our games without fans in the arenas, because, and I believe on Thursday night, March 12th, Golden State was going to do that. As a matter of fact, they were going to do that because there were already public gathering size limitation restrictions that were in place in the Bay Area. And so their game that they were going to play on Thursday night, March 12th, between Golden State and the Brooklyn Nets was already set to be played without fans. So we were on the doorstep of it before Rudy Gobert became professional sports patient zero as far as COVID-19 goes. And I think that ultimately, if that's the vehicle that allows for restarting things sooner rather than later, I would suspect that most professional sports leagues would be amenable to that, because again, it does at least start some level of the recovery, the return to normalcy. And I hate to be this guy, but obviously this is a significant aspect of things. It starts a revenue stream, and
Right.
and clearly everybody's looking for that.
Brother Mark, this thing has moved fast, hasn't it? Because you remember the last thing you and I talked about before we left the press box at the last broadcast was, hey, Mark, what do you think? Will the NBA play games in empty arenas? And, you and I, that was what was that, March 9th?
March 7th.
March 7th.
Yep.
Okay, so March 7th, there's that big Mark Followill brain. We had zero clue that within a week's time it would be shut down. Period.
Yeah.
Much
Look,
less
look,
empty arenas and stadiums.
hey man, you remember when we had that conversation and I said, I think what the NBA is doing right now is basically saying, look, we're not going to be like others and be caught without any sort of plan here. So we have a lot of contingency plans in place on how to deal with this. And then plan X or plan Z that far down the line is, okay, if all of the other things don't work, then way down the line, okay, we'll play games without fans. Now, things at such a pace that maybe my estimation that on that Saturday when I was telling you it was plan X or plan Z, that was probably well, clearly that was a pretty erroneous statement at that point. But certainly it's an indication of how things can change. And it's a great life lesson. We always say this all the time, but I don't know how seriously that we take it, that life can change for any of us in an instant. And in this particular case, I think we always apply it to, tomorrow's not guaranteed and not promised for any of us. And we all think about it from the isolated personal sense of, I could leave the house and get in the car and something unexpected and something tragic could happen. I don't think we've ever thought about it from a collective standpoint of things could change in an instant for all of us at once. And clearly it has.
Jonathan, what say you? What do you hope they do?
Well, I agree with Mark on I do think the key thing is the normalcy, the return to that. And I think that just having, the extra kind of lift for people just at home who are looking for something to change, right? I think having sports come back would be a positive thing. Might even be a positive thing from an MLS perspective to get some additional viewers. Honestly, there's no sports out there right now. Anybody looking at Twitter, right? People are talking about watching Aussie rules football and other stuff at 2:00 in the morning, right? So, there could be that side benefit as well. But I do think that, just after 9/11, right, there was a lot of talk about return to normalcy. This is a little bit different situation because, it's not, checking for bombs or weapons and whatever. You can't put extra security up to protect yourself from a virus. But I do think that it's important to find a time when you can return to that. And I think staging it might be a good way to do it. So starting with those empty stadium games and then making a plan to play, in front of partial or smaller fields perhaps. And then, the full MLS stadiums might be a good way forward.
And don't think there's not going to be this careful calculation, because there's going to be such a mad race for sports dates once this thing is over.
Once it does, yep.
And so there's going to be this calculation of, we'd like to be the first, because of baseball will be out there, NBA and whatever. Everybody would love to be the first one to do it, because you'll get more eyes on it, as you just said. Then again, there's the balance of, are they going to get criticized because they're doing it too soon? And so there'll be a very
I don't think that comes if you're playing in front of empty stadiums. I don't think you would get that same criticism if you just said, hey, we're going to open up, right, and everybody come in and watch the game. So I do think
like John said, until the first guy gets it.
And if you can get access to those tests, which, that's another controversial issue, because but like supposedly WrestleMania is going ahead. I've never been more excited for WrestleMania. Right now, it's going to be in a performance center and it's going to be empty people. And I've been to a WrestleMania, right? But still, when I hear that and it's a week and a half away, and I'm like, yeah, I can't wait, because it is that sort of longing for something like we're used to, right? And yeah, sure, we're used to watching WrestleMania, whatever, even though there's not going to be fans. But again, it's like, if you can test every athlete, if you can make sure that that's not going to happen, then you're kind of in the clear. But if you take the risk and say, well, no one's feeling sick, that's where you are opening the doors. But I think that all the major leagues in the US are wise enough and well run enough, not to say everyone is perfectly run, but I think all of them are wise enough and well run enough from a global standard that no one's going to kind of make that mistake. It will be fascinating, I think, to watch how other leagues come back, because as I mentioned, I think Mexico's champion at the bit. Belarus is still playing on. Like, that's not a major one, but like, it's still weird that like you can have this country where they're just like, nah, nothing's happening, everything's fine, right? But I think it will be fascinating to kind of see leagues come back slowly, and who makes the decision and who jumps too fast and that kind of thing, because it will happen, right? I really do think it will happen. But hopefully the leagues here are smart enough and cautious enough to say, as much as we want to be back, we have to do it the right way.
And I think MLS actually has a bit of an advantage because of the way that they schedule weekly games to be able to actually plan for that and come back, have time to do the testing, the planning, and actually they could even potentially set up and say, we're going to have, people come watch the games in a month and still be able to set things up. And then if they need to make the decision, a week or two ahead of time that, no, it's just going to be, an empty stadium, they can still do that. And I think that trying to do that with, for example, the NBA, with the number of teams and the congestion, the double headers, stuff like that would be almost impossible, right? So I think that it'd be a lot easier to do that with an MLS than a lot of the other professional sports in the U.S.
All right. Well, we are getting dangerously close to time for this happy hour to be actually an hour. So I want to kick over to YouTube real quick. Bo Matthews says MLS would blow it up if they were the only sport playing. Every game would feel like the World Cup. So he agrees with us. And then Tommy asks, okay, so do you see any permanent league changes coming as a result of this play suspension, such as a league calendar change? Like if we're going to be talking about the changes from having fans or not, like are there any permanent ones happening, do you think?
MLS changes?
Yeah, NBA is one where I think, and I think this is what Mark is asking, because I think when you look at that as a fan of the league, I say, a lot of the things that they've sounded out, like having a soccer-esque League Cup, having, a shortened season and having more additional tournaments running concurrently with the league. That's one where I'm fascinated to see if they experiment. But remember, they're already, I mean, Mark knows better than me, but like 2/3 of the way through the season almost, right? Or something around there. So MLS has sort of the benefit of this coming with only 2 games in. So it'd be weird, I think, to suddenly like do something different to your competition rules. But I think the MLS will probably stay the same as long as we can get things going here in the next couple months. But I'm fascinated to see what other major leagues do that are already kind of in progress, because that's pushing the next season back farther and farther, and then maybe you can cram more games in.
2 quick thoughts on that. Thought one is that at least from a Major League Soccer perspective, they're probably pretty well equipped, because they just basically were until last year playing until December. So I think they could jump right back in. And if they went for 1 year back to a calendar that was that they did in the past, and especially because who knows what this is going to mean. Obviously, this is presumably, we know this is the end of the Olympics, presumably the end of the Euros. So you're not going to have the summer interfere in terms of club duties and in terms of that making things more difficult to stretch it out until November or December. So you could get back on a regular schedule. I think from an NBA perspective, this might signify the great opportunity to experiment with something that I think all of us in the league think would be a great idea, which is move your calendar and not have 3 months of your season competing with the NFL. Start in mid-December, start Christmas Day, play from Christmas to August instead of October to June, and have less competition for your biggest games in the summer, and not be going up against the biggest and most important league that still is managing to draw headlines even in this time, the NFL, because they're still going about their business in terms of an offseason. So if you could move away from competing with the NFL from October to December and only have a very small portion of your season competing with a week or two of NFL regular season and NFL playoffs, I think a calendar shift would be great for the NBA. And clearly that's going to happen for the 2020-2021 season. And I hope it's more than a 1 year experiment. I think there's a lot of wisdom in them looking at something different.
Yeah, I think what Tommy
conflicts with arenas with NHL as well.
Yeah,
I think what Tommy was asking, I think he might be, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he was asking about, will this lead to a permanent change? He might be one of the subset of that little subset of people who are just certain that Major League Soccer needs to go to what is called a world calendar, which is really just, when people say that, what they mean is the Western Europe calendar, because it's not really the World Soccer calendar, because a lot of people do play through a lot of other leagues around the world, play at different times of the year. But I think, and I've seen a little bit of this talk on Twitter that, hey, this could be the opportunity. And it's basically what they're saying is it's the opportunity to maybe for them to go to do the thing that I wanted them to do anyway. And the other thing I'll say about this year, yes, there's been talk, of course, about pushing Major League Soccer, MLS Cup all the way back to late December. And the one issue with that is the CBA requires 4 weeks time off between the last Major League Soccer game and opening of training camps. Now that CBA hasn't been ratified officially by the owners, although it's been agreed upon, so they could possibly tweak that language a little bit, but that's just something to consider.
Very cool. So we gave John an opportunity earlier in the happy hour to plug his newsletter. Mark, Steve, do you guys have anything you want to plug?
Let's see. Yeah, I do have something I'd like to plug.
Cool.
And Steve knows, Steve works and is close with these guys as well. Today on Twitter and Facebook, and I posted on LinkedIn for the first time in my life today, as a matter of fact. In the TV business, if you're, there's obviously announcers that are in front of the camera, but as I've always said, for every Mark Followell that's on camera, there's many more people off camera who don't get their names mentioned on the air and their faces on camera, who are really important to what we do. So in conjunction with the two play-by-play voices on the TV side in town, Josh Bogorad from the Stars and Dave Raymond from the Rangers, we've launched a GoFundMe campaign today. It's on my Twitter, it's on my Facebook, and my LinkedIn now, as a matter of fact, as well, that we're trying to help raise some money for those guys because it's the gig economy, it's the event economy, and the vast majority of those cases, if you work in one of the many off-camera positions that exist in the television sports production industry, then no games means no paychecks. And TV production means the people that run cameras, the people that mix audio, the people that build graphics in the truck, the people that make sure that instant replay angles get on the air as soon as they possibly can. And that's the tip of the iceberg. For a typical NBA broadcast, there are 35 off-camera positions, thereabouts, give or take a handful, depending on what the budget is for each particular show that are involved. So, a lot of those guys, look, there's a lot of people in America and a lot of people in the world that are hurting right now. And so asking for something, I understand, is difficult in this time for those guys, but they mean a lot to me and they mean a lot to what we do in terms of sports television. A lot of those guys work very closely with Steve and I on the FC Dallas broadcast, and with myself and Derek and Skin on the Mavs broadcast. So anybody who would be willing to look into giving what they can, or at least sharing to others so the message gets out there that, there's over 100 people in Dallas-Fort Worth that work full-time in the sports television broadcast freelance industry and off-camera positions. And we want to help those guys raise some money for those that, really have some serious needs and that are in need of assistance in this difficult time. And nobody wants to be in a position ever to have to ask other people for money. But, we'd love if anybody would consider helping those guys out a little bit.
Good on you, Mark Followell. Nice
That's
job.
awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Steve?
Anything to plug? No, I have nothing going on. I have FC Dallas, an editing contract right now, and then one other small social media contract, and they're all shut down. So when Dustin asked me to do this, I just said, well, let me see if I can squeeze you in. But I got to say,
So we're not going to get another Steve Davis weekly column on FC Dallas now? The 25th anniversary?
No, because that's shut down too.
Yeah.
Can I just say, though, I got to tell you guys, I enjoyed this. And part of the reason I enjoyed it is it's nice faces. And, haven't seen a lot of you guys in a while. And right now, look, we all understand why we're doing what we're doing, but there's psychological damage to isolation. And it's difficult whenever you're not in your routine and interacting with people in a way that you're used to interacting with people. And so it's good to see you guys. It's nice to see friendly faces, and it's nice to talk to you guys. And I've noticed myself picking up the phone and calling people rather than when I get a text message from somebody. Well, why in the hell am I going to just text them back? Why not just call them and talk for 5 or 10 minutes and see how they're doing, or 15 or 20 minutes or whatever it is. So, it's nice to see you guys, and everything like this is, for me anyway, is therapeutic to get to see friendly faces and people whose company that I enjoy greatly. So good to see all of you.
Cheers to that.
I do have some props for Steve, because Steve did actually agree to come on the podcast before all this happened. So I'd actually DM'd a little bit before, saying, hey, the plan was to talk about the LAFC game when it was coming up. But obviously now we're talking about very different things.
Always happy to talk soccer, man.
All right. Well,
It's a talking sport.
It is.
Yeah.
all right. Well, you can find us online at DallasSoccerShow.com. On Twitter is at Dallas Soccer Show. I'll put those plugs from everybody into our show notes so you can check that. And until next time, everybody, thanks for listening.
Cheers, boys.
Saludcita que la buena.